The crash was planned. Your panic was the product. In 2009, a school janitor in Vermont named Mark quietly did something that most financial advisors were too scared to do. While the entire country was convinced the economy was finished, while experts on television were comparing it to the Great Depression, Mark kept buying. Every single paycheck. Slowly. Quietly. Into his simple 401k. By 2019, Mark had over $800,000 saved for retirement. His secret wasn't a hot stock tip. It wasn't a genius algorithm. It was just one thing: he understood something about market crashes that 95% of Americans never figure out. And by the end of this video, you will too. Let me be straight with you from the jump. Nobody in school ever taught you what actually happens during a stock market crash. Not your parents. Not your teachers. Definitely not your bank. And honestly, that's not an accident. Because when you understand what's really going on, when you see the full picture, you stop being afraid. And a scared investor is a profitable investor. For everyone except themselves. Today we're going to break this down the way a trusted older sibling would explain it. No jargon. No charts you need a finance degree to read. Just the plain truth about where your money goes when the market tanks, who's really on the other side of that trade, and, most importantly, what the people quietly building generational wealth are doing differently than everyone else. 5 points. Stay till the end. The last one is the one that actually changes your behavior. Let's go. The giant misunderstanding: why losing money in a crash isn't what you think. Let me start with a question that sounds dumb but actually isn't. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? Now let me ask you the real version of that. If your portfolio drops $30,000 and you never sell, did you actually lose $30,000? The answer might genuinely surprise you. No. You didn't. Here's why. The number you see in your brokerage app, that $30,000 loss, isn't a bill. Nobody is mailing you an invoice. Nobody is withdrawing cash from your bank account. What happened is far less dramatic and far more important to understand. Your portfolio balance is an estimate. It's the stock market's best guess, right now, at this moment, of what a stranger would pay you for your shares if you wanted to sell them today. That's it. That's all it is. A live, constantly updating appraisal. Let me put it in a way that hits home for most Americans. Imagine you bought a used pickup truck 3 years ago for $28,000. You drive it every day. It runs great. Then one day, you check Kelley Blue Book out of curiosity and it says your truck is now worth $18,000 because the used car market softened. Did you lose $10,000? You still have the truck. It still drives. You didn't sell it. Nothing in your wallet changed. The only thing that happened is that the opinion of what someone might pay you for it changed. That's not a loss. That's a fluctuation. Your stock portfolio works exactly the same way. And this is the foundational thing most people never get taught. The stock market is not a bank. Your balance is not your net worth the way your checking account is. It is a real-time popularity contest, a constantly running auction where millions of people are simultaneously deciding what everything is worth based on their mood, the news cycle, interest rates, and about 1,000 other things. When the mood shifts, when people get scared, the auction prices drop. And everybody freaks out because the number on their screen got smaller. But nothing was taken from you. Nothing walked out the door. The shares you own, those little pieces of real companies with real buildings, real employees, real products, those are still sitting right there in your account. Every single one. The loss only becomes permanent when you panic and sell. That's when you hand someone else your shares at the discounted panic price and walk away with less cash than you put in. That's the only moment the loss is real. Here's something wild to sit with: most people who lost money in 2020's COVID crash the fastest 34% drop in stock market history, would have recovered completely and then some if they had just done absolutely nothing. Just sat on their hands. Just gone outside, touched some grass, and waited. The biggest financial mistake most Americans ever make is reacting to a number that wasn't real yet. The invisible scoreboard, how wealth silently switches hands during a crash. Now here's where it gets real. And I want you to really pay attention to this part because it's the section that will make you feel either angry or empowered, probably both. When the stock market crashes, the wealth doesn't disappear. It moves from one group of people to another. And there's a very predictable pattern to who loses and who wins. Let me paint the picture. Imagine a neighborhood yard sale. Somebody starts a rumor that there's a storm coming. People panic. They start slashing prices, desperate to unload their stuff before it rains. A vintage guitar that was priced at $400 gets dropped to $150. A solid oak dining table goes from $600 to $200. People just want out. Now, a small group of people who check the actual weather app know the storm isn't coming until next week, if at all. They walk calmly through the yard sale with cash in hand. They buy the guitar for $150. They buy the dining table for $200. When the storm never shows up, or even when it passes, they sell those same items for what they were originally worth. Or more. Who made money? Not the people who spread the rumor. Not the weather app. The person who stayed calm while everyone else panicked. This is literally what happens in a stock market crash. Every single time. Think about October 2022. The S&P 500 had dropped about 25% from its highs. Inflation was hot, interest rates were spiking, and every financial headline was screaming recession. Regular Americans were dumping their index funds left and right, moving to cash, some swearing off the stock market forever. Meanwhile, institutional investors, pension funds, endowments, family offices, quietly wealthy individuals, were buying. Not because they're geniuses. But because they understood the yard sale dynamic. They knew the companies in that index were still operating. Still generating revenue. Still paying employees. The businesses hadn't changed. Only the panic had. By the end of 2023, the S&P 500 was up about 24% for the year. The people who sold in 2022 missed it entirely. The people who bought during the crash were sitting on fat gains. Every single sell has a buyer on the other side. This is the uncomfortable truth that Wall Street doesn't advertise. When you sell your retirement fund in a panic at 2 a.m. because your phone notified you about a market drop, a computer algorithm, or a fund manager who's been waiting for exactly this moment, buys those shares from you at your panicked price. And they ride it back up while you sit in cash wondering when it's safe to get back in. Spoiler, by the time it feels safe again, you've already missed 60% of the recovery. That's not a guess. That's what the data shows, over and over and over again. The wealth transfers. Always. The only question is which side of the transfer are you on? The gasoline on the fire. Why crashes spiral worse than they should? Okay, so if crashes are just temporary opinion changes and wealth transfers, why do they sometimes feel like the entire financial world is ending? Why do they spiral so hard and so fast? The answer is something most everyday investors have never heard of. It's called forced selling. And it's the real engine behind why crashes go from bad to catastrophic. Here's the thing most people don't realize, a big chunk of the stock market isn't being played with people's own money. It's being played with borrowed money. And borrowed money, when things go wrong, creates a chain reaction that drags everyone down, including people who did absolutely nothing wrong. Let me walk you through it with a simple scenario. Say there's a big investment firm. They have $200 million of their own money. But they borrow another $800 million from a bank to invest. Now they're controlling $1 billion in the market. If stocks go up 10%, they make $100 million on a $200 million investment. That's a 50% return. Sounds great, right? But when stocks drop 15%, they lose $150 million. That wipes out their entire $200 million cushion, and then some. The bank that lent them the $800 million gets very, very nervous. They issue what's called a margin call. Basically, give us more cash as collateral right now, or we're selling your positions to protect ourselves. The firm doesn't have extra cash on hand. So the bank sells into an already falling market, which pushes prices down more, which triggers another firm's margin call, which leads to more forced selling, which crashes prices further, which triggers more margin calls. It is a financial avalanche. And it doesn't stop until either the selling exhausts itself or buyers step in with enough force to reverse it. Here's what makes this infuriating for regular people. You could have a perfectly good index fund, zero debt, doing everything right, and your balance still gets cut in half because of a chain reaction set off by over-leveraged hedge funds you've never heard of making bets you never agreed to. That's not you losing. That's collateral damage. And it's temporary, but it feels catastrophic when you're living through it. There's one more force that makes crashes feel worse than they are: the media. Not because journalists are evil, but because fear sells. A headline that says, "Market slightly volatile, long-term outlook fine," gets 4 clicks. A headline that says, "Market bloodbath, trillions wiped out," gets 4 million clicks. So every crash gets covered at maximum volume, maximum alarm, maximum doom. And the average person watching the news has absolutely no framework to separate "this feels terrifying" from "this is actually permanent." Understanding forced selling and media panic amplification doesn't make the crash hurt less in the moment. But it does give you a crucial anchor when you need it most. This is a mechanism, not a verdict on your financial future. The waiting room, where the money hides and why it always comes back. So here's the big question. If it's not destroyed, where does all that money go during a crash? Picture a waiting room. A nice one, comfortable chairs, decent coffee, a TV in the corner. During a market crash, trillions of dollars essentially file into that waiting room and sit down. They're not gone. They're just waiting. The first place money goes is cash and money market funds. When investors sell stocks, they get dollars back. A lot of those dollars don't go anywhere dramatic. They park in savings accounts and money market funds earning a modest interest rate. This money is liquid, safe, and bored. It's earning maybe 4 or 5%. It wants to earn more. The second place is U.S. Treasury bonds. When fear peaks, investors flock to government bonds like people flock to a sturdy building during a tornado. The logic is simple: whatever happens to the stock market, the U.S. government is probably going to pay back its debts. So money floods into treasuries. This is why you often see bonds rise in value when stocks are falling. The third place is real assets: gold, commodities, real estate in certain cycles. Things people trust when they don't trust the system. Gold in particular becomes a kind of financial security blanket. But here's the thing about all three of those places: they have a ceiling. Cash loses to inflation over time. Bonds are slow. Gold just sits there looking shiny. None of them can do what a diversified portfolio of American businesses can do over a decade or two. So the money waits. And then, when the headlines get a little less apocalyptic, when interest rates stabilize, when earnings reports start coming in better than expected, it gets impatient. It starts flowing back into stocks. First slowly, then all at once. And that's when the recovery happens. Not because of government magic or Federal Reserve tricks, but because hundreds of billions of impatient dollars sitting in money market funds decide it's time to come back. The buyers show up. Prices rise. And the people who held through the whole thing quietly start gaining back everything they've lost, and then some. The market has recovered from every single crash in American history. Every single one. 2 world wars. The Great Depression. The dot-com bust. 9/11. The housing collapse. COVID. Every time, the money comes back. Because it has nowhere better to go over the long run. The crash playbook, what actually separates the people who win from the people who don't. Everything we've talked about is interesting. But interesting doesn't pay your bills in retirement. So let's get practical. What do the people who actually come out ahead during crashes do differently? It comes down to 4 things, and none of them require a finance degree. Number 1, they built their crash cushion before they needed it. The single biggest reason people are forced to sell during a crash is not because they're dumb or scared. It's because they need the money. Job loss, medical bill, car dies, roof leaks, life happens. If your only financial cushion is your investment account, you will be forced to crack it open at the worst possible time. 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a plain high-yield savings account. That's your crash cushion. Build it before you invest a single dollar in the market. This is the financial equivalent of having a spare tire before you take a road trip. You hope you never need it. But the one time you do, you will be so glad it's there. Number 2, they automated their investing so emotions can't interrupt it. The janitor from Vermont at the top of this video, the reason he succeeded wasn't because he had nerves of steel. It was because he set up automatic contributions to his 401k and then mostly forgot about it. The money came out of his paycheck before he could spend it or second-guess it. He didn't have to make a brave decision every month, the system made it for him. Set up automatic contributions to your retirement account or brokerage account. Every paycheck. Don't touch it. Let the automation remove the emotion from the equation. Number 3, they knew what they owned and why. There's a huge difference between someone who panics when their portfolio drops 30% and someone who stays calm. The difference usually isn't courage. It's understanding. If you own a broad index fund, something that tracks the entire U.S. stock market, you own tiny pieces of thousands of companies. Amazon, Apple, Walmart, Johnson & Johnson, J.P. Morgan. Companies with real customers, real revenue, real employees. When the stock price drops, those things don't evaporate. The stores are still open. The apps still work. The products still sell. Understanding what you own makes it far easier to hold when prices temporarily fall. If you'd panic sell at a 30% drop, you probably don't fully understand what you're holding. Fix that first. Number 4, they turned off the noise. This one sounds too simple. But the research backs it up. One of the most famous studies in behavioral finance found that the investors with the best returns weren't the ones with the most sophisticated strategies. They were the ones who checked their accounts the least frequently. During a crash, every notification, every cable news segment, every tweet about the market is engineered to trigger an emotional response. Fear. Urgency. Action. And almost any action you take in that state of mind will cost you money. Mute the alerts. Avoid the financial news. Call a friend. Go for a run. Let the crash do its thing, which is to temporarily scare people into selling at a discount while the patient people quietly accumulate. Here's the one thing I want you to do before you open your brokerage app again. Ask yourself 3 questions. Do I have 3 months of expenses in a savings account right now? Do I know specifically what I own and why? And am I invested in something I'd be comfortable holding for 10 years, not just 10 months? If you answered no to any of those, that's your homework. Not picking hot stocks. Not timing the market. Just building the foundation that makes it possible to hold through the storm. Because the crash is coming. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not this year. But it's coming. And when it does, it will hand the patient investor one of the greatest opportunities of their financial life, while the unprepared investor hands over their shares and walks away with less than they started with. The choice of which one you want to be. You make that choice today. Not during the crash. Today. If this gave you even one thing to think about differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe if you want to keep getting financial truth delivered straight, no fluff, no hype. I'll see you in the next one.